Thank you, ma'am. We now have team number 1, represented by Surya Prasad, Bani Sehgal, Dikshit Bhattacharya, and Aditya Shankar Dikshit, speaking for the motion, and team number 2, represented by Dikshita Khullar, Shivangini Anand, Ved Rajghadia, and Abhay Chauhan, speaking against the motion.
This debate, we hereby declare the debate open, and I call upon the first speaker from the opposition team to speak on the subject.
Ladies and gentlemen, what is the most fundamental duty of a state? This is Dikshit Bhattacharya. I'm representing Springdale School, Dhalakua. Sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, what is the most fundamental duty of a state? Is it collective security, law and order? Or is it to provide its members a minimum level of rights and dignity to unfold themselves? Is it not the duty of the state to give each member an equal chance to lead a better life? Free and compulsory education, my friends, is not an offering of pity made to gain some brownie points. It is a solemn duty of all nations, an inalienable right of all. It is a worthwhile investment into human resource building. It is an integral part of the social security net of countries, not just to ensure that no one is left behind, but to also create a responsible, capable, and efficient nation as well. No wonder India took the big step of introducing a corporate social responsibility law with emphasis laid on two things: healthcare and education. When you're drawing water out of the well, you'll be making it sweeter for the benefit of all. Taking lessons from the German economy's miracle years of the 50s and the 60s, as well as Japan's path from reconstruction, into economic superpower status as we know it today, this gives us the immense sense of how a nation's human resource plays an important part in its destiny. For India to accomplish its dreams of becoming a superpower, the Right to Education Act will be the base on which the future chapters of the India story will be written down. Free and compulsory education, my friends, is imperative for nations to fulfill their potentialities in an equitable manner. It is equally imperative now that education be looked as an exercise of nation building rather than simply, say, charity on one end or business as usual on another. It is a valuable investment in the future. Please.
Right. So now in your speech you mentioned that it's an investment for countries. However, there are certain nations like the African republics who do not possess the right investment to in fact give to their children. So how in that case will they be making a equitable investment towards education?
Sure, there's a very common saying in Hindi. It says, "Paisa hi paise ko kheenchta hai." When you start investing in your human resource, it brings you returns in the form of rising incomes. And that is how the circle perpetuates itself.
One information. The question here is great. We all know that education is a right for every motion. Right. So education is a right granted, but what right now we're discussing is whether it is compulsory. Is it in your opinion right now that making education compulsory for a person who might want to go into vocational studies is a better alternative than giving him that choice?
Hold your horses. I'll just complete my script and I'll come back. Greater state control, along with sincere reforms, can give a better oversight over education at large while having measures conserving schools' autonomy simultaneously. This can prove essential in dealing with the problems that all developing nations, including ours, face. That is, unemployable or semi-employable students even after education. By taking these measures, we can jumpstart entrepreneurial activities and growth in SMEs, small and medium enterprises, by making the ground right for them, which are engines of job creation. This is what we need, my friends. SMEs are already responsible for 65% of global net new jobs since 1995, with this proportion being ever greater in developing countries like India. Apart from this, having an educated, work-ready workforce can open up opportunities for employment abroad in greater numbers, especially to aging industrial nations. Yes, it is a pinprick on our hearts, but it is a fact that we have to face. Job creation rates can hardly match the ballooning workforce, absurdly astronomical unemployment numbers. We should equip ourselves to send people to greener pastures. Even this is in our national interest. Remittances already make up 4% of our GDP. This can also be absolutely instrumental in Indian foreign policy and posturing in the coming years. The private sector is hamstrung by the need to make profits, and it is not their fault, but this leaves 115 million children globally without education. Denying education is denying a person his future, and compulsory and free education is the only way in taking these forgotten children along. Education is something that impacts all our lives in all its facets. Most importantly, standards of living and health. In developing nations on Asia and Africa, this could be a gateway to better health and sanitation standards, as well as lower fertility rates. Free and compulsory education in itself is a holistic diagnosis investment that has the potentiality to impact human lives in a massive way. It embodies the path of knowledge, a flame that shows us the path of a better common future. It is in our interest that anyone and everyone have the capability to tread that path, and rather than be looked down as a liability, be an asset. Thank you.
Just remind everyone that all speakers are requested to announce their names and not school names. One. And
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Abhay Chauhan. I'm from Jiriberga Public School. Can we start? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Chairperson sir. Today we are here to discuss about a very important aspect, a question which is raised in every nation. Firstly, we would like to our stand on two basic key terms of the agenda, that is free and compulsory. Now we actually do partially agree with the proposition that there should be compulsory education. But what we completely disagree upon is that upon free, whether that education should be free or not. Firstly, what my fellow worthy opponent has failed to talk about was statistics in case of a developing or a poor nation. Firstly, we would have to talk about the social reasons. We would have to talk about the economic, the political, and the monetary reasons of this agenda. Firstly, whenever there is free education, it will be taken by granted by the students. But if you have something free on the platter, and there comes a certain point of time where you start taking that things for granted. Second, children and parents will lose interest because whatever is provided for free will be taken for granted. Third, we will have to talk about India. According to a survey conducted by the National Sample Survey Organization, taking into consideration 711 schools taken at randomly from 11 states, it was found out that 60% of those schools did not have access to clean drinking water, did not have toilets. So now if we talk about providing free and compulsory education in very poor or developing countries, we have to understand the fact that there will be hampering on quality of education, healthcare facilities and infrastructure.
Point of information.
Now we would like to continue by talking about the situation of government schools in India. How one teacher, it was found out that in most of the schools, one teacher is teaching more than 100 students in a classroom. Please tell me, does that qualify as quality education? Will the child benefit if he's studying with 99 people in the same classroom? Will the teacher be able to? Yes.
Thank you. When you said that we will start taking it for granted, isn't education something that, yes, we should take it for granted, it should be so abundant? It is like healthcare. When someone is on their deathbed, we should deny them, sorry, quality nahi hai.
So that I will get back to your answer. But to continue what we said, now taking into consideration a small school which has free education. Now talking how comparing that to a school in which students pay, the type of difference in quality of school, the infrastructure, the facilities that students get, there will be a huge disparity in that case. Now what my
Point
worthy
of information.
Yes, sir.
Shouldn't, as you said, that private schools with fees against government schools, aren't government schools that basic, let's compare it to cars, that basic car with just a steering wheel and four wheels that will take you to your destination, while other you're paying a premium for just a better version of the car? Shouldn't it be ubiquitous?
No, sir. Sir, see, now, in this world of globalization, when the world is a village, all of us, including me here, want to get into colleges like Stanford or Harvard. Now, can we achieve that by getting a basic education?
Point of information.
Thank you. So now, continuing what I said, can we get that with having a basic education? Can we compete against people who are at the international level, competing at the international or national level in terms of what not? That includes extracurricular activities and sports. Can we do that if we just have basic and normal education? Can we stand against them? Can we get full marks in the SATs if we have that small and basic education? Moving on, now we agree that there are nations like the United States of America which have actually which have enforced the education which is free and compulsory for everyone. But we need to understand at that point of time that these are developed nations. They have a strong GDP, they have proper infrastructure, and they have a well-defined social system. Can we find that in developing nations like India or Bangladesh or Pakistan, which is already overflowing, which has an overflowing population? Now, I would like to conclude by saying that only developed nations which have that kind of economy can actually support this argument. But which countries, like most of the countries which are underdeveloped or do not have that kind of funds to actually get that kind of free and compulsory education, it is not a practical solution. Thank you so much.
My name is Aditya Shankar Dikshit. Human beings as individuals have always existed as a collectivity in a society. And as such, we've always had this fascination with the egalitarian and utopian society. Skeptics continue to say that we live in a world where this is an unachievable dream. Well, friends, I stand before you today saying that it is achievable, it is realizable. And the way forward, free and compulsory education for all. History has stood witness to the fact that it was always the flame of education that led to social change in the world. Whether it be in the form of new methods of war, economics, industrial revolution, the French Revolution, anything. Learning, which is characteristic of education, has always been a central feature of social change, putting education at the helm of any kind of change in society. Consider the example of sex education. This form of education has not only helped us increase awareness about STDs, but also has helped us reduce their transmission by half in countries which pursued sex education policies vociferously. Another front that is related to this is overpopulation. It threatens us as a very species. The pressure on natural resources is tremendous and ever increasing because of the amount of population growth rate. Life will become unsustainable if population continues to grow. But again, even a malady as aggressive as this can be cured with the medicine of education. Case in point, Iran was able to cut down its population growth rate by half in just 20 years by pursuing not repressive policies that China does, but a powerful education system. They were able to do it through awareness drives. Let me take another example that is far closer to home. India. Would you friends not agree with me when I say that in India dowry is one of the biggest social evils that hamper our growth as a society? It is empirically proven that among the educated class, cases of dowry have reduced drastically when compared to the uneducated sections of society. But education can be the instrument.
Right. So now coming again a little closer to home now, understanding that in Delhi there are private schools, you and I are from private schools themselves. Considering that private schools are part of the private sector, and if those become free, there will be no that amount of money that is going from private sectors will decrease the GDP. So what do you have to say about that?
It won't, as simple as that. When education can be the instrument of our salvation, why? Why do we insist on not giving it to those who can't afford it? Allow me to take a global angle on this. The processes of ghettoization and intensification of ethnic or religious identities is something that I have studied as a sociology student. Well, when people are educated, they form an exclusive club, and that club is not accessible to everyone in society. when people are not when people don't have access to that to education of any kind at any level whatsoever, they retreat into their shells further, seeking in comfort in what they know is familiar, giving rise to what is one of the biggest threats to our society, terrorism. If you look at this closely, you will realize that books are better alternatives, are more prudent alternatives to fighting terrorism than guns. Education as a system was meant to be the beacon of hope and light for all of us, not just those who have the money to afford it. Today, I implore all present here, every one of you, don't let it be the kind of power that is found only in the vaults of the rich and the opulent. Let it be the kind of power which, much like the Force in Star Wars, surrounds our society, binds us together, and penetrates our minds. Makes us all into the luminous beings that we are meant to be. And well, if the arguments of the opposition are to be considered, well, you will only find education in the houses of the opulent, not in the houses of somebody like Abdul Kalam, APJ Abdul Kalam. Thank you.
Now, one thing that the proposition has been continuously talking about is that education is a right. All of us know that education is a right, and nobody over here is contesting that. The point in question over here is whether education is free and compulsory. Understand the fact that if a student does not want to pursue further studies, a compulsory law such as this will force him to do something that he does not want to do, and thereby make him unproductive. But enough about them, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get down to something that rules education around India and around the world, and that is the political influences that govern it. Now let's understand, if education is made free and compulsory for all, there is no given parameter as to how to judge each student. Now, sir, in such a situation, ladies and gentlemen, a Mandal commission-like area will arise where people are selected on the basis of their caste or their income, etc., etc. So the point remains, ladies and gentlemen, over here, that free education does not differentiate between people. And understand, the Mandal Commission again created such political disturbances in India that till this date, the education system cannot run properly. Yes?
Point of information, yeah. Are you saying that giving education to people of lower classes, giving free education to the people of lower classes is wrong?
Sir, again, understand the point, education is a right. However, you cannot make that compulsory for each person.
But are you saying you can't provide it to the poorer people? You shouldn't provide it to the poorer people?
No, sir, understand the fact right now that when you're talking about making it compulsory for people, we're talking about making it whether we have to put it on people, and there is no clear way of defining such things. So that is what I am saying at the end of the day, that compulsory will not make it good for anyone sitting in this room. Now let's understand something as to what to teach. Now, ladies and gentlemen, over the past few years, there's been a great debate about whether standardized testing is the best way to go ahead. Now, ladies and gentlemen, why standardized testing is needed in the plan that they suggest is because then you will need a parameter to judge people. And given all the different social parameters, the economic parameters, systems such as this simply cannot function. The fact remains that standardized testing will require students to know subjects such as English and mathematics, which is not prevalent in some of the locations in the world. And given in countries such as Africa, which is still trying to develop, in the next 50 years, mathematics and science is not the way that will lead the world. They need vocational studies. And that is the entire thrust of our argument over here, that we cannot make it compulsory. In order for them to learn to earn their livelihood in their lives, they need the vocational skills that currently are not prevalent. That is what
point of information.
Yes.
Are you trying to say that by having standardized testing, we all know that there are state boards around India and there are 2 central boards. And these state boards catered particularly, especially in Gujarat and Bengal, particularly to the needs of those regions. Differentiated education can also be standardized, and it can be a way of providing vocational education. So are you completely disowning that one?
Sir, thank you for the extremely good question. Now the point over here remains that each state board, let's take into consideration the countries over here. Understand the fact that mathematics is not something that is needed in every single board in the world. Though it is a right, it cannot be made compulsory. A child living in Africa might require the vocational skills that are required for his success, and mathematics is certainly not one of them. Now, second of all, I was also like to ask the opposition to clarify this. The debate over here is whether it is compulsory and not whether it is a right. Granted, it is a right. Nobody in my team will go against that. However, we are asking for an explanation as to make it compulsory for a person who needs vocational skills to make his life a success. Thank you.
I'm Surya Prasad. and I'm here to speak for the proposition. At the Janaranjani preschool in Kerala, in rural southern India, children aren't building castles in the sand. Instead, as they sit cross-legged in front of a thin layer of sand, they're learning the fundamentals of reading and math. Hawke's government in Australia in 1988 said that education is one of the principal means for an individual to achieve economic independence, personal advancement and growth. But in the past, these benefits have only been enjoyed disproportionately by the more privileged members of the community. Those benefits need to be shared more widely and more equitably in the future. Sweden, Norway, Finland and Denmark have a combination of high living standards and low income disparity that has captured the world's attention. At a time when the growing gap between the rich and the poor has become a political hot button in developed nations, the region known as Scandinavia has been cited by many scholars as a role model for economic opportunity and equality. All the Nordic countries provide its citizens with free education. In fact, Sweden pays its students to study at school. Encouraging free education will attract those who have been deprived of this basic right. Now the government invests in its schooling system and makes it all free. The students study there and learn and gather information. Their thinking expands as they explore new opportunities and avenues. Once they are independent and self-sufficient, they start earning. And in return, they pay the government in the form of tax once they have started earning. So this investment is not only aiming towards equality, but also enhances the economic output and the sustenance of the nation. Furthermore, our intelligence would spread to other countries when we migrate, therefore indirectly being worldly to improve the worldwide society. All this for the price of free education. The returns are great.
Point of information.
Yeah.
Right, so now you've spoken about countries like Sweden, Denmark, which are countries which have developed or have a proper GDP, have a proper system of infrastructure. However, you're not talking about those poor or developing nations in Africa, like South Sudan or Ethiopia, where people don't even have money to feed themselves. How do you expect people to actually send their schools to children?
As you specifically mentioned, Africa, so Kenya is a huge example for that, where they are investing in their human resources, they are building schools and they are educating their children for free. So that completely, you're done with that Africa. Anyway, I'll continue. Don't you think that the idea of education should only be limited to books? Providing a wholesome bite of education for all, including vocational training, some kind of a sport maybe, and learning to dance, sing, or play an instrument just as a hobby. This will help the child to identify his passion. Education is a mighty tool, and why should this power to empower be confined to those only who can afford it? Where this will help us to solve a number of problems in our country and later on in the whole world. Earnings rise for the
information
who have education. It is in our power to educate all the children of the world to become a little better as a person and a little happier. Rather than shaping the education system to an increasing, like a market, it should be shaped to become more accessible, democratic and fulfilling for people in all forms of income, races, backgrounds. A free and a meaningful education is definitely within our reach. I like to think that we all believe in one point. Education should be free. I do believe education is a right and not a privilege. I do believe education should be complementary to each and every human being. It shouldn't be exclusive or expensive. I do believe in free education where access to learning materials is based on a desire to learn and not on the ability to pay, and therefore education is not a product and henceforth it should be free.
Do it very decently, isn't it? We don't have to be aggressive about the debate. It's all for everybody's benefit and we are all enjoying. So put across your points in a more mature, in a more grown-up manner, isn't it? Sushruti.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shimangani Anand and I will be furthering the opposition on this stand. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the proposition has provided you with a very beautiful, pretty picture of how the world functions, and the opposition will be providing you with the reality of the world. Now, understand that the proposition has used Scandinavian countries as an example. You can't use countries like the United States of America, Norway, Finland, or Indonesia as examples. To fill water in a bottle, an individual needs to have the correct resources. At the ground level, countries all over the world, nearly 2/3 of the world, do not have the resources required for correct or good education. Education is like the mineral water produced by professors with higher investment. Free education will lead to poor quality because it will be supplied or served by individuals who aren't paid much in countries lacking that sort of investment. And ladies and gentlemen, let's all admit it, by providing someone with poor healthcare, that person will eventually die. Now, by making education free and compulsory, we first need to realize that education in the world is extremely standardized. You need to give an individual that amount of training or in vocational studies in order for them to prosper. In countries like India, where an individual is stuck in the trap of continuing their family's profession, let's understand the case of farmers. They
Point of
don't-
information.
Yes, sir.
You took the case of farmers, so the farmer doesn't send his children to school. Why don't you think why the farmer isn't sending his child to the school? Because he wasn't educated himself.
Sir, now understand a very basic point that we are, as the opposition, are trying to make here. There is nothing in the world that is free. If there is no money coming from one medium, understand that there is money coming from another medium. In countries where education is in fact made free, there is a tax that is levied
Point of
on
information.
individuals who don't even want to pay that tax in the first place. Yes, sir.
You talked about how furthering the profession, of the family is an important thing in India. Is it not because children are not being provided with education that they don't have the options to go into different occupations?
Sir, now again, understanding that you have failed to understand the mere contention of the opposition here, we are merely trying to state that children, even though they are provided with the standardized way of teaching in schools, A, there is no quality, B, half of those students don't want to go to those schools, and C, they're not provided with the basic vocational studies that they are in fact interested in. Hence, the whole point of making it free does not stand, because we are investing resources in making it free and those resources themselves are being depleted here. Hence, we are wasting resources, very precious resources of countries that are already developing, and we are wasting the livelihood of those children themselves. Now, by that, the opposition rests their case. Thank you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, what's happened over here is that my dear proposition has tried to make a cake. They put the cream, they put the vanilla, they put the cherry, but they don't have the base. Nobody is saying that education is not a right. Education is a right, and I'm happily saying it, but I'm going to keep on harping this tune till the time I get an answer. Can education be made compulsory? That is something that the opposition has still not answered. Nobody is not saying that education is not important. Education is important and vocational skills are even more important. But yet again, I am asking this question: can it be made compulsory? Can a child who wants to pursue something else in life be forced to go into that field? This is the question that they still have not answered, and I'm going to continue talking about the next 120 seconds. Understand that right now, education is essentially in an area where, in this liberalized world, it is opening up. Currently, it is the current standards of education do not allow a child to pursue whatever he wants to do. So my question is, can you force a child to go into a field that he does not want to do? So without taking much of your time and I would just like to ask the opposition once again in their final speech, can education be made compulsory? Thank you.
When I was a small kid, I hated maths. Completely hated it, and I was pretty sure I wouldn't need it for the rest of my life. Now, some say here that it is unnecessary baggage that is unneeded and I want to do something else. But kindly tell me, how can you do something else? How can you do anything at all without a basic set of skills that is imparted to you through education? So there comes the question, can we make it compulsory? Should we make it compulsory? Education is that basic set of skills that you will require wherever you go, whatever you do. Secondly, it somehow, I don't know whether it was a cake reference, but it reminded me of Marie Antoinette. Let them eat cake. That's what she said. Similarly, some other people also say that it is a complete wastage of resources. I mean, educating the poor, absolute waste of resources. What can they do after all? Absolutely not worth it. As a student, when I'm approaching the afternoon hours, I have this much water left. Tiny amount. I have a water cooler downstairs. Now what I do, seemingly these days, there is too less water left, I shouldn't drink it at all. But I should reserve it for the rich. I should reserve it for the class bully. I should reserve it for the person who will give me an ice cream at the end. Rather than going to the water cooler and filling it for myself, I ensure that our throat remains parched and by the time I go home, I'm half dehydrated and I need ORS. This is what some people propose to make the world of. The sheer amount of pessimism that I am noticing these days in everything. As Indians, we have this favorite pastime of being pessimistic. But now it is starting to overshadow everything. I cannot do it, shayad nahi hoga, hoga hi nahi. Cannot do it at all, not possibly. Ho hi nahi sakta, it's not worth it. We should ignore the millions who have been standing out there waiting for their chances to grasp a better life. We should completely ignore some basic set of skills that everyone will require to make whatever out of their lives. And we must say, not worth it, it's a wastage of resources. Well, if it was a wastage of resources, there will be no APJ Abdul Kalam standing here to the world, being the missile man of India and saying, I was poor, but it was a wastage of resources to educate me at all. He is a product of subsidized education. How many more examples do you need to come out of your pessimism and finally face up that it is required? Destitution must end and our country must shine, for which compulsory and free education is an absolute must. Thank you.